All right. Good morning, everyone. Hi, I'm County Supervisor Joe Simitian, and I want to welcome you this morning. And I also want to say thank you for joining us for what I think will be a very well-received announcement, and also to hear from some folks who have firsthand knowledge of our subject matter today. I want to thank you all for your interest, and I want to underscore that today's press conference is designed primarily to provide this announcement and also to take questions from members of the credentialed press following the announcement with respect to the County of Santa Clara's potential acquisition of the Lehigh property in the Cupertino foothills. I know, of course, that there's a lot of interest out there in the larger community, and I'm sure there will be a lot of questions in the larger community. Folks are hopping on even as we speak. I do want to ask that we go, however, to credentialed press with questions, and that when the time comes, you'll identify yourself and your organization. And for members of the community, I would just ask that you hold those thoughts, hold those questions until we have a public hearing on March the 2nd. I hope all of you are aware of the fact that our annual meeting is scheduled for March the 2nd, and we'll have quite a bit more to share with you at that time. So please pull your questions together, and we look forward to answering them on the 2nd. And of course, you can always go to our website, which is supervisorsimitian.org, supervisorsimitian.org. I am joined here today by colleagues in local government. Thank you for joining us, colleagues. Also, our friends in the environmental and labor community to share with you our desire to see the county step up and find a way to acquire the property that is currently home to the Lehigh cement plant and quarry. If you're not familiar with the property in question, it is more than 3,500 acres in the hills above Cupertino, just off Stevens Creek Boulevard. And for more than a century, limestone has been quarried, mined on that site. That means that the activity predates our county's zoning ordinance, and our ability, frankly, to oversee mining operations is therefore somewhat limited. And that has, of course, been a source of concern. Additionally, I should mention that back in 1939, the county issued a use permit for the cement plant. I know people sometimes think of the cement plant and the quarry as one and the same, but they are really technically two different operations. That 1939 use permit is about what you would expect for an 83-year-old use permit. It's a little thin on conditions for operation, and it doesn't contain an expiration date. But I think most of you know that since I returned to the board back in 2013, I've been asking both my staff in my office and our county staff in the planning department and other agencies how we could be more rigorous and effective in our oversight. Critical to today's announcement, I guess the question is, how can we actually chart a sustainable path, a sensible, sustainable path for the future, rather than simply let the years roll by without regard to the consequences? That's the question that I've been wrestling with, and I suspect from the nodding heads I'm seeing that that's a question that others have been wrestling with as well. If that's the question, then that leads to yet another question, which is, what if the county were the property owner? And wouldn't that be a very different path for all of us? Not only would that provide much more control in terms of timing and the future use to which the property is put, but we could consider closure and reclamation from a public benefit standpoint, rather than have it primarily focused on shareholder outcomes for a multinational corporation, which is the ultimate owner of the property. So with that view in mind, this coming Tuesday, I'm going to ask my colleagues to support my request that our county staff come back to the board in just 90 days with options for the Board of Supervisors to consider with respect to the acquisition of the Lehigh property. And I feel confident that there's widespread support for the county's legal acquisition of the property throughout the community. That's why I am joined here today by the mayors of the cities that neighbor the quarry, including Mayor Darcy of Cupertino, Mayor Anita Enander from Los Altos, and Mayor George Tyson from Los Altos Hills. And it's also why, in addition to the mayors, we're joined by representatives of the folks who actually do the work at Lehigh, the very people who have been or are employed at the site, We have Mr. Niels Ash from the Operating Engineers, Local 3, and Mr. Eddie Venencio from the Teamsters, Local 853. We thank you all and welcome you all. And finally, I think it's why we have such strong support from our friends in the environmental community. Lehigh's neighbor, quite literally the folks at the Mid-Peninsula Regional Open Space District, who are represented today by their general manager, Ana Ruiz. We're also pleased to have with us James Eggers, who is with the Loma Prieta chapter of the Venerable Sierra Club, and our own local homegrown hillside protector, now known as Green Foothills, represented today by Brian Schmidt. Thank you all for being here. I think we've all come together today with the same purpose, which is to support, encourage the Board of Supervisors in considering the really extraordinary opportunity that this moment represents. I think it's an opportunity to respond to the very legitimate concerns of the community, which we've been hearing about over the years. It's an opportunity to ensure that the public's interest is front and center going forward. It's an opportunity to conserve the land in a way that's consistent with the open space values that are, I think, essential to the place that we are here in Silicon Valley. And to do all that in a time frame that avoids unnecessary delay and that sees the reclamation moving forward as quickly as possible and appropriate, frankly. So we will now have one or two spokespeople from each of the three groups that I've identified today who've joined us. Will all be available for Q&A, even those who don't make introductory remarks. And speaking first for the local communities is Mayor Darcy Paul of Cupertino. So Mayor Paul, let me ask you, I can see you've already unmuted, so you're a pro at this. Go to it and share your thoughts. Mayor Darcy Paul of Cupertino.
Thank you so much, Supervisor Simitian. I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the experienced impacts by our residents, not just in Cupertino, but in the surrounding areas with regard to the mining and the effects on their lives. Over the years, we've had a tremendous amount of truck traffic on a regular basis. There are fumes associated with the mines, dust. When you go around our respective communities, oftentimes the complaints have to do with the fact that, people wake up in the morning and they see a really thick layer of dust on their vehicles when the operations are in full force. Water quality has been an issue over the years. So really this is, for us, it's a matter of health, especially in these times when we've seen firsthand how very important cardiopulmonary health is to making sure that we're able to work in concert to, for example, combat much more widespread health-related threats in that kind of effective manner that we in Santa Clara County have been able to do. When we think about the benefits of expedited closure at this time, not only is this a really great time to think about it when we're looking at, the way the economy has been going and how, this particular company has been approaching its California properties, for instance, but the sooner closure occurs, the sooner that we can have these environmental issues associated with the mining this near a population center. We understand that it was not originally near such an intensely densified population center, but the fact is it's now. And so the sooner that is closed, that activity is closed, the sooner these problems can be addressed. And our environment, as we're all learning with the effects of climate change and pollution, is indeed a shared resource. When we figure out ways to keep people safer, everyone benefits. And when we solve the problems of how to work together to keep each of us healthy, everyone benefits. And as the United Nations recently resolved, a clean and healthy environment is indeed a human right. Personally, I'm really optimistic about working with the county and all of our neighbors in the county to bring our residents to the table to talk about what needs to be done to the space in order for the whole community to benefit. And I'll just, close briefly by saying, we all know that we have a lot of very bright, committed people in this area, and then we worked all so very well together. I know we can do everything we can to keep everyone healthy and successful and everything clean and safe. So thank you so much, Supervisor Simitian, for your leadership in bringing this forward. And I think that we have a lot of optimistic possibilities in the future, not just for the people that are immediately benefited with the clean environment, but for everyone. Truly, I do believe that. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Mayor Paul. Let me ask now that we turn to our supporters from the labor community. We have Mr. Veneziano, as I mentioned earlier, who'll be followed by Mr. Ash. So if we can ask Eddie and Niels to take it away. Let me go to Eddie Veneziano first from the Teamsters Local 853. And you're going to need to unmute there, Eddie.
Okay, thank you, Supervisor Simitian, and to everyone here today. My name is Eddie Venancio, and I am a business representative for Teamsters Local 853. Our local represents 16,000 workers here in the Bay Area, including workers here at Lehigh plant. I've been involved in construction in this valley as a proud Teamster for nearly 25 years, the last 3 as a business representative. I'm extremely proud and grateful for the opportunity to speak here at this press conference today. The Teamsters have been running trucks at this plant for 80 plus years. Our workers also live here in the community and look forward to the restoration of the property, which will create good paying jobs for many years. Our Teamsters, along with our partners in labor, also look forward to partnering with the county and potential future uses for the site that will be good for the entire community. It's time that we do the right thing, restore this land, give it back to the wildlife and the people so that future generations can enjoy this beauty, the beauty of this place, and show our children and their children what we can accomplish when we all work together for a common good. The Teamsters of Local 853 support Supervisor Simitian's recommendation for the potential acquisition of the Lehigh cement plant and quarry property located in the unincorporated Santa Clara County, Cupertino and Palo Alto. Thank you all for allowing me to speak on this issue, and thank you, Supervisor Simitian and your staff, for your passion and the great work that you do.
Thank you, Eddie Venancio. And Eddie, if I added an extra syllable or two earlier, in spite of my best efforts, my apologies. Let's go to Niels Ash and from the operating engineers for his take on this as well. Niels?
Thank you, Joe, for this opportunity to speak. My name is Niels Ash, business representative for operating engineers. We represent just under 40,000 members within our local. A lot of our members live and preside within the Bay Area, and the acquisition of the Lehigh property would create over 750,000 man-hours to reclimate the project or the area, not including the other projects that it would provide workers for good working opportunities with good benefits. The operating engineers support Supervisor Simitian with the reclamation and acquisition of Lehigh.
Thank you, both gentlemen. And let me turn now to Ana Ruiz, who is speaking on behalf of the Mid-Peninsula Regional Open Space District.
Good morning. As a representative of the Mid-Peninsula Regional Open Space District, I can say that we have been always looking forward to the eventual reclamation of the property, seeing great potential for bringing rehabilitation to the land and numerous public benefits. As the largest landowner neighbor to the quarry, we front the northern boundaries with our Rancho San Antonio Open Space Preserve at close to 4,000 acres, and the western boundary with Montebello Open Space Preserve at close to 3,500 acres. And we know that these lands, especially the areas on the west area of the quarry and the ridges, provide rugged areas that are still largely in a natural state, as well as other areas that with some additional care and rehabilitation can be brought back for natural resource values. And there's incredible habitat potential here, habitat that is already frankly used by local wildlife, deer, coyote, bobcat, mountain lions. There's wildlife connectivity that we see here between the two open space lands. And again, great potential to protect our natural resources in this region and to protect those in perpetuity. And as our agency actually is celebrating this year 50th anniversary, we're seeing this as a in perpetuity project to continue to preserve these resources for people, for wildlife, for the benefit of our environment for generations to come.
Thank you so much, Ana Ruiz. And let me just say before we go to questions that I want to answer one question which has already come up today, and that is why now? What is prompting this particular proposal at this particular time? And I think really there's a three-part answer. The first is that the continued history of concern, complaint, violations at the site, I think is proof positive that the uses are incompatible over the long haul, as Mayor Darcy Paul indicated earlier. The second reason, and this is perhaps the most important one, is that we had anticipated that this was a site that was going to be closed by 2032. 2032 pursuant to the current plans. But the folks at Lehigh have already submitted an application for a reclamation plan amendment, which would permit the expanded operation of the site, new or expanded pit. That's been on hold for a while. They are reassessing their position, have indicated that a new application may be forthcoming, all of which is to say this. We know that if we just let the years roll by, as I said earlier, we're going to be reacting rather than articulating a vision for the future that we can make real. And the notion of endless further mining and cement plant activity and no end in sight, I think makes this the absolute, not only ideal, but necessary time to say, wait a minute, let's start the conversation right now about how we can plan for a different future. So the fact that there is an application already on file but suspended and a new application that is imminent makes this absolutely the perfect time to be having this conversation. And the last thing I'll say about why I think this is a good time is because part of the conversation always ends up being, is this really a doable thing? And I would just encourage people to look at the Dumbarton Quarry over in the East Bay, where just within the last year, they've had some very exciting developments as they've opened up parkland, open space, not only camping, but RV camping as well. The possibilities are endless. So the answer to the question, why now, is the history of concern, complaints, and violations makes it plain we need to take a step forward. The time is now before there's a new application processed that envisions substantial extension of time and expansion of mining on the site. And we know now that this is a doable thing. This is entirely achievable. So let me go now to all of you who have been patiently waiting for a chance to ask questions. You can simply raise your hand, use the raise your hand function there in the Q&A feature, and someone from our office will call you out. And if you would do us the courtesy of letting us know your name and your organization, I'll try to play controller here and move the question to whoever the right person is. Go right ahead. First question, please.
The first question is from Bruce Barton.
Okay. Mr. Barton, go right ahead. You'll need to unmute. There we go.
Hi, Joe. Bruce at the town crier. So how do you pay for this? This strikes me as $1 billion property.
Well, I think you got to be careful tossing around numbers like that, because I know we're going to be joined by some folks from Lehigh on the call today, Bruce. So I don't anticipate the number is anywhere in that region. Let me just put that out there on the table. But I think the short answer is we don't yet know. That's why we're asking for a report back in 90 days so that we can start to get serious here in a hurry. I think it's entirely possible that we could look at some kind of a park or open space bond measure to be paid off over the long haul. I think there is the potential for some negotiation with the folks at Lehigh, because remember, if they are on the hook at some point for that reclamation cost, that's somewhere in the $60 to $100 million range. So if they can avoid that and go on their way. That's a significant point of conversation, I feel sure, and that might be part of the solution. And you never know if we can put all of this back together again reasonably well. Some portion of the site might be appropriate for housing. I'm looking at Ana Ruiz, and I know that she's thinking, I want it for open space, but you know, if we can do two good things at the same time, create a little bit more housing in a housing shortage like the one we're confronting today, and preserve the vast majority of the site for open space and recreation, that might end up being a winner all around. So I hope that answers your question. The shorter version would be to be determined, TBD. Thank you. Next question.
We have a raised hand from Paul Rogers.
Paul Rogers at the Mercury News.
Joe, how are you?
All is well, Paul. How can we help you?
Two quick questions. So who do you envision actually owning the property in the end, County Parks or Mid-Penn? And second, as you know, this quarry for many years has been the major producer of cement in the Bay Area. It built a lot of the freeways in the Bay Area. It built Shasta Dam. Last I recall, it produced something like 50% of the cement in the Bay Area and 70% of the cement used in Santa Clara County. If we close that, where does the Bay Area get its cement, and what about the carbon footprint of driving it from further away?
I think the ultimate ownership is clearly also in that to be determined category, and I think we're looking at an opportunity to start that conversation now with a report back in 90 days. But I think we all need to keep an open mind. You know, possibly some of it is owned by one agency or entity, some of it by another. Some is likely to be appropriate for active recreation. Some, as Ms. Ruiz from Mid-Penn mentioned, more appropriately for open space and habitat preservation. So I think different folks who have different areas of expertise are going to be key players. But the reason we've invited the folks from Mid-Penn here is because they've been wonderful partners with us in other efforts to protect the area. They're immediately adjacent, as I know you know. And if I remember correctly, Anna, the slogan for this year's 50th anniversary is 52 forever. And forever is really, I think, a very nice number. So I'm hoping that we can focus on that. To pivot to your second question, Paul, I've had the same question, which is, so where do we go from here in terms of construction activity in the Bay Area and Northern California? And it's one of the issues that I think we can address given the time that this will take. So while all of us, I'm sure, will wish that everything could go more quickly, the time that this will take will give us a chance to ask and answer those very questions about how do we make that transition to using other resources and other sites as providers. If this was a next week, next month, next year proposition, that would clearly be a much more urgent question, but it's not. As you know from your coverage of the Dumbarton Quarry, you know, this is an endeavor that's likely to take years and years and years, and we'll have to ask and answer that question when the time comes. But I don't want to pretend we've got an answer today. We don't. Next question.
We do not have any other raised hands at this time, so I would encourage folks who would like to ask a question to please raise your hand or use the Q&A.
We'll give folks just another minute or two, and I want to say thank you again to the other mayors who joined us, including Mayor Anita Enander and Mayor George Tyson from Los Altos and Altos Hills, respectively. Thank again, Eddie Venancio and Niels Ash, our friends in labor, and also want to thank our environmental supporters, including Green Foothills, Brian Schmidt for being here, and James Eggers from the Loma Prieta chapter. Let me just check in with our office. Any other questions at this time?
There is another question from Paul.
Go to it.
Thanks. So I'm curious about the union situation at the plant? Are all the workers at the plant unionized? Are some unionized? And then second, you talked a little bit about reclamation. Do you know under reclamation law, or at least under the county permit, how long the quarry operator has to do the reclamation, to restore the site after they stop work? Basically, how long of a window would there be on that? Thank you.
I don't know the answer to your second question, Paul. I do know that the current reclamation plan anticipated reclamation closure and reclamation completed by 2032, which is clearly not going to be the case if there's a successful application for an expanded operation there at the facility. And as I mentioned at the beginning, one of the challenges with this site is that because it has been present for so long and the authorizations have been so long standing, there's frankly not as much as we wish there were in the way of tools, deadlines, conditions of approval, so on and so forth. So my hope is that before we are looking at a new application, or if in fact we get a new application and that conversation commences, that we talk about, what's a sensible timeline? Is there a plan, frankly, that works for Lehigh and for the community? I think that's entirely possible. And I should be very clear about this. I don't see this as an adversarial exercise, quite the opposite. We got a property owner here. They're going to expect to be treated fairly, good enough, they should be. And then that is the basis for a conversation about, all right, what makes sense both for you and the community long term? How can we plan an exit strategy that works for everybody? And to earlier questions, is affordable. But let me go to both Mr. Venancio and Mr. Ash to talk a little bit about the situation on the site in terms of the workers and who's there, who's not. I suspect, gentlemen, you're getting the question because it's not every day we get local mayors plus labor plus environment all in the same place on the same topic. So I see that Mr. Venancio's microphone has been activated, so go to it.
Yeah, we have approximately 9 Teamsters working at this facility. At one point, I'd like to say we had 100 Teamsters there. Probably even more than that. That was before my time. The plant has slowly been getting smaller and smaller, and we've been losing workers, and doesn't seem to be any mining going on, and just crushing rock. So to us, it makes sense to team up with the county and Open Pen and everyone else, and we can utilize this time that we have. I don't see, I don't know for sure, but I don't see any mining being done in the near future there. So why not take this time and take this opportunity and put this mountain back together, this land back together, and it can create good jobs for everyone. We do have union workers there at this time. At some point, there were non-union workers working there. They are no longer there as far as I know, and we do just have union workers there, but it's very little compared to what we had.
And Mr. Ash, anything you want to add?
I think Eddie said it best. It was hundreds of union workers. Now we're down to a handful. The working opportunities for union members and non-union members, right, is astronomical for what could be there. The plant itself, as Eddie said, is shrinking.
Got it.
We've had actually multiple unions out there, and we're actually shrinking down the unions to just a few.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Ash. Thank you, Mr. Venancio. If you'll both mute your mics again, and I'll see if there are any other questions before we wrap this up and let people go on to the rest of their day.
There are currently no raised hands or additional questions.
All right, then we will say thank you to you all.
Oh, wait.
Up.
Oh, it looks like Bruce just
Just in under the wire. Mr. Barton, what else have you got for us?
So Joe, wondering about some kind of timeline you might be able to offer us for this scenario playing out under the best circumstance.
Yeah, I think, you know, we have asked for a 90-day report back. I don't expect to have all the answers in 90 days, assuming board approval, but I wanted to sort of force folks to engage with the very practical and challenging questions that have been asked today, to which we don't yet have answers. And I don't think we should shy away from the fact that right now there may be more questions than there are answers. I think that's an honest and candid assessment of where we are. But as many of our guests today have noted, you know, the time's now. We got to get started. And my hope is that what we will see in 90 days is the beginnings of a plan and a process to have this conversation. Starting point, I think, is to talk with the folks at Lehigh and get a clearer sense of what their plans are. That is sometimes tough, I must say. I think many of you know their ultimate parent corporation is a multinational, Heidelberg Cement, if I remember correctly, German-based. Their Western operations have been sold within the last year or so. So that means that the office we now deal with is centered in the Dallas area in Texas. And so, you know, it's not our easiest set of conversations, but I was just in a meeting yesterday on Zoom here with folks from the Dallas office talking about, you know, their plans for the future. And I would say, you know, seemed like there's a possibility there to have a conversation. It was too soon to share what we were going to propose today, but I dropped a not terribly subtle hint that we'd be offering some thoughts in the near future about the long-term future. And, you know, they said they're looking forward to hearing it. And I think we need to set up a process that starts those conversations immediately, if not sooner. That would be my time frame, Bruce, if we can make it happen. Okay.
Thanks.
Last call. Let me ask Kelsey from our office. All good to go?
Yep. No more raised hands.
All right, then let me say thank you again to everyone for participating. Brian Schmidt from Green Foothills, good to see you here. Sorry we didn't need to tap you. And James Eggers from the Loma Prieta chapter of the Sierra Club. Great to have you present. Thank you, as well as our two mayors, Mayor Tyson and Mayor Anita Enander from Los Altos Hills and Los Altos. I expect you'll be hearing more from these folks in the days ahead, and we will see you all next Tuesday when the Board of Supervisors will take this matter up and consider the proposal. Thanks so much. Be well.